On September 27th, 2018, in a little city in the Netherlands, a security camera captured 6 men walking calmly toward this brick bungalow inside one of the country's holiday parks. A holiday park is a place that offers cheap accommodations to tourists. They typically have things like campsites, RV parking, cheap bungalows for rent, and they also often offer things like swimming and golfing and bowling, so it's kind of like an all-in-one for families on vacation.
Oh,
but on
that's
this
nice.
September day, these 6 men caught on camera were neither family nor on vacation. Instead, as they walked, it was very clear from their body language that the only thing they were interested in was getting inside of their holiday bungalow. Once they did reach the front door of this bungalow, the apparent leader of the group, who had dark brown hair and a full beard, he pulled out a key, unlocked the door, he opened it up, and then he made sure the rest of the men took off their shoes before walking inside. And then once all the men were inside the door, the leader shut the door and locked it behind them, and then barefoot they walked through the hallway into this corner living room in the back of the bungalow. And in this room there was this L-shaped couch that was centered on a coffee table and a couple of chairs scattered throughout the rest of the room. And so the 6 men kind of took up seats in these different places, and then after they were all sitting down, 2 of the men who had been seen walking into the bungalow carrying backpacks and duffel bags, they pulled those bags out and set them on the coffee table.
Okay, where do you get this information from? I don't know how he does it, but every story feels like it's not even from the internet. He's personally worked for the CIA and really know all this information himself. It's scary. This sounds like a drug haul.
And as soon as these 2 men did that, the other 4 men who had been chatting amongst themselves went completely silent and turned and just faced the bags on the table. It was very clear that whatever was in the bags was very significant. So significant, in fact, that the group had pulled most of the curtains across all of the windows inside of this bungalow to make sure no one outside could look in and potentially see the contents of these bags. And once the 2 men unzipped the duffel bags and backpack and began putting the contents of the bags onto the table, it became incredibly clear why the men were so on edge. Inside of these bags were guns, and in the Netherlands, no private citizen is allowed to possess them. Over the next hour, the 2 men who had actually carried the guns into the bungalow, they began going over some instruction with the other 4 men of how to use these slick black pistols and AK-47 rifles.
Yo!
They taught them how to load the guns and reload and how to aim, and they did a number of dry firing exercises, which is basically pulling the trigger on any real gun when the gun is not loaded. And so these 4 students paid careful attention to their 2 instructors, and at some point they became more confident, and you could just see the excitement was building in the room. At one point, one of the students grabbed 2 of the AK-47 rifles and held one in each arm and pretended to fire them simultaneously.
He wild for that. I can't get over it. Never mind. I'm sorry.
But when one of the 2 instructors reached back into one of these bags and pulled out a new item, a vest, and laid it on the coffee table, immediately the mood in the room shifted again. Now the students seemed more nervous than excited. One of the 4 students eventually walked forward and somewhat reluctantly extended his arm to allow the instructor to slip the vest onto him. And then once the vest was put on the student, you can see in the camera footage, there are pockets all over this vest with little wires poking out of them. This vest was a suicide vest, and the pockets contained explosives. As one of the instructors showed the student in the vest which cord to pull in order to detonate himself, you can hear in the background someone saying, "When the police come, you can take them with you." A little over 2 hours later, these 6 men were done, and they began packing up their arsenal of new weapons back into the bags, and then they stood up to leave. But when they left, it was the students who had the bags of weapons, not the 2 instructors. Once the 6 men had left the bungalow and were back outside again, they put their shoes back on, they locked the bungalow behind them, and then the 2 instructors were seen on camera walking away from the bungalow to a separate car. They drove off, and then the 4 men that now had the weapons, they walked to a nearby white cargo van, which contained one other man who had not been inside of the bungalow with them, but he was very much a part of this group. Oh, okay. He was their driver.
This is a gun trafficking situation. Okay, we get this. America, you know, guns are allowed. Be America free, right? You know, right to bear arms. But it's funny. I didn't know Amsterdam didn't allow guns. They allow weed, but they don't allow guns. But in America, we don't allow weed. Well, certain parts of America doesn't allow weed, but we allow guns. Countries are different, man.
As the 4 men with guns approached the white van, the driver saw them, he climbed out, he ran around to the back and opened up the back doors that led into the windowless back cargo area of the van. And the 4 men with guns, they climbed inside. The driver shut the van, climbed back into the driver's seat, and then before long, the driver was leaving the parking lot and heading north towards the city of Amsterdam, which is the capital of the Netherlands. Every year, Amsterdam plays host to one of the largest gay pride parades and events in the world. The location is significant to the LGBTQ community because it was here in 2001 that the first gay marriage bill was signed into law, making the Netherlands the first country in the world to legalize gay marriage. So, for 1 week a year, hundreds of thousands of people pour out onto the streets and line the canals of Amsterdam, all drawn together to affirm gay rights and to celebrate their sexual expression, preference, and identity.
Of course.
And the men in the white windowless van intended to use their new weapons and training to kill or maim as many parade goers as possible. They were hopeful that their terrorist attack would rival or even eclipse the attack from 2015 in Paris in a nightclub that killed or injured more than 500 people and sent shockwaves through Europe. 30 minutes later, the 4 men in the back of this windowless van felt the van slow down and pull off the main road and not come to a complete stop, but just kind of begin to slow roll, which was odd because they had no reason to slow down and they were at least 30 minutes away from their destination. And so instinctively, the men reach down and make sure their guns are safely stowed inside of their bags and out of sight in case somebody opens the back door. They don't want people to know they have guns. They are illegal. And so as the van continued to go painfully slowly for really no reason that was clear, the men in the back of the van were really starting to worry that something was wrong. Now remember, they have no windows. They can't look outside. They don't know what's going on. However, there was a small crack in the partition that separated the back of the van from the front of the van where the driver was. And so the men in the back of the van began craning their necks and looking through this little crack to try to see if they could understand what was in front of the van and, why the driver had stopped. And when these men looked through that little crack and they saw what was out there, they immediately began to panic. They began reaching down and fumbling for their bags, trying to open them up to get their guns. And then by the time they're kind of getting the guns into their hands, all the doors on the van fly open and the men in the back just begin firing their guns blindly at the open doors. But when they pull their triggers, nothing happens because their guns were fake. They had been sold to them by the people who were flinging open their doors, the police in tactical gear with their dogs, and they knew these guys had fake guns. They knew their suicide vests were fake. They were full of fake explosives. They have nothing lethal inside of this van. And so the police, they just fling the doors open and send in the dogs. And so the dogs, they jump into this van and these wannabe terrorists are screaming and they're firing their fake guns at the dogs as the dogs are shredding these terrorists to bits. And then whenever they tried to jump out, the police would just pistol whip the terrorists until finally all of these wannabe terrorists were in the fetal position crying, or they were crouched down with their hands over their head. It would turn out the 2 instructors who had brought the duffel bags of guns into the bungalow with the other men, they were not other fellow terrorists. They were undercover police officers who were a part of the special national anti-terrorism team who were able to infiltrate this terrorist cell. These undercover cops were the ones who sold the fake guns and fake explosives to the terrorists, and they were the ones who set up this meeting at the bungalow, which allowed them to place cameras and listening devices all over the place. Plus, they were also able to bug the white van because they knew they would be departing the bungalow inside of it. So all the wannabe terrorists that you saw on camera, plus 2 others that were not seen on camera but were totally involved, were all sentenced on October 8th, 2020 to anywhere from 10 to 17 years in prison.
2020? 2020? This happened in the pandemic, right? Right. 2020 was like pandemic time. These people out here trying to blow up some people that just have a different sexual preference. That's crazy. I ain't saying nothing, bro. Oh, that's crazy. Say it. Bro, stop laughing, bro. Stop laughing.
The Amsterdam Pride Parade went off without a hitch.
Okay.